All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chris Simpson here in sunny San Diego, and welcome to the ISSA Pre-Professional Virtual Meetup. And today we're going to talk about cross-career challenges, how to move into security from another industry. So before we begin, I'll give you a quick intro. We'll talk a little bit about the ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle. Then I'll introduce my fellow panelists, and then we'll hop into your questions and some questions that were emailed in from listeners. So first of all, like I said, I'm Chris Simpson. I run the cybersecurity program at National University here in sunny San Diego, and I run my own cybersecurity business. And I've been a member of ISSA since I first got involved in security in about 2001. It's a great organization. And in my opinion, it's probably the best security organization out there for networking and career development and things like that. So the purpose of the ISSA Cybersecurity Career Lifecycle Program is to help information security professionals as they progress through their career. So this group here and this meetup today is for folks in the pre-professional and folks considering transitions into the field. So we'd like to provide our pre-professional and entry-level members to have the opportunity to meet experts in the given specialty of cybersecurity in an informal and relaxed venue. And this is a great venue, and feel free to ask any questions that you like. And so during the virtual meetup, you can ask questions and learn firsthand what it takes to get the job, what skills are necessary, and how to attain skills, as well as any other questions that might help in preparing you for working in this field. And our panelists are really experts in the field, and some are actually new to the field too, and they're going to give you their insights into what it takes to get into the field. We hope to continue the virtual meetups with additional guests and topics based on feedback from our pre-professional and entry-level members. So please give us that feedback, and please tweet about this meetup, and you can use the hashtag #ISSA CSCL to tweet about this meetup. And so before we begin, I want to talk about some scholarship opportunities. So education is expensive, and ISSA has some scholarship opportunities. So the ISSA Education Foundation supports the education of the next generation of cybersecurity professionals with scholarships for undergraduate and graduate studies. The ISS AEF, they're going to award 3 scholarships in 2016, not 1916. So the first one is the ISS AEF E. Eugene Schultz Jr. PhD CISS Memorial Membership Scholarship, and that's for $3,500. They have a general scholarship at $3,500, and then they have a memorial scholarship for Sean Harris, who wrote a lot of the CISSP books, for $2,000. And you can get more information on the ISSAEF website, and that is at www.issaef.org for specific information and deadlines and things like that. So now I'd like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So first I'd like to introduce Tony Flores. So Tony, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your expertise, and how you got started in the industry and what you've done to make yourself successful.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Flores. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am probably the newest to the industry. I've been a technical communicator for many, many years. I am a member of the Society for Technical Communications, and I've been recognized as an associate fellow. I'm proficient in my area, and a year ago or so, actually a few months ago, someone invited me to do a writing gig, technical communication, technical writing gig in the security area, and he thought he could fill me in on the background on all I needed, and I'd be able to do the documentation. As it turns out, when I asked me, and that awakened my interest in the area. I've been exploring it. I went to the RSA conference conference and I'm meeting people and really working on getting my first in the cybersecurity field at this point. Transition already had professional technical communication.
Great, thanks, Tony. I think you were a little broken up there at the end. I'm not sure if that was my end or your end. But welcome to this field, and you bring a great point. Technical communications is a challenge. I was at a Cyber Patriot boot camp earlier today, and some of the instructions weren't kind of clear for the high school and middle school students. And we kind of talked about how if you have like the technical knowledge and you can communicate complex instructions, man, that's a great skill set to have. So welcome to the community. So next, I'd like to introduce Mark Muir. Go ahead, Mark. Over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mark Moore. I'm located in Baltimore, Maryland. Pretty much, I took a little more circuitous route into security. My background is in system administration and help desk. I was doing a lot of security work. Then I've taken the past 9 years or so off to be a stay-at-home dad. Now I'm basically trying to get back into the working world in the security field. And in the meantime, I've gotten a couple of the security certifications, the Security Plus and the CEH, as well as a master's in cybersecurity. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now, and I'm hopeful something's going to be coming along pretty soon.
Great, thanks, Mark. And it's interesting. A lot of security people, it seems like they come from the sysadmin side, right? They kind of do the IT sysadmin thing, and then they get interested in security, or they get thrown into the fire sometimes because there's some type of attack or breach. So great. Thanks for joining the panel today. And next, over to you, Greg. Greg Sternberg. He's our next panelist.
Oh, hello. My name's Greg Sternberg. I'm based in Denver, Colorado. I spent quite a few years as a programmer, moved into architecture, and sort of about that same time moved into security from an architecture standpoint. I now work for SunGuard Availability Services as a security architect. I've pretty much done everything you could think of when it comes to computers, and this just seemed to be a natural extent, something I enjoyed, and I've continued with it for a couple of years here.
Oh, great! Thanks for sharing that, and it's kind of interesting how architecture is really critical when we think about security and designing secure systems. Because if you have a poor architecture, there can be a lot of holes, and as you know, attackers will try to find those holes. So now it looks like we've got a couple of questions in the Hangout already. So we'll go ahead and we'll kick off with the questions, and then we'll hop into some ones that were sent in. So here's the first question. So the 80-20 principle states that 80% of the results come from 20% of the work. What are some of the things that we should learn or do that will produce this 80-20 results to maximize our work efficiency in the InfoSec world? So who wants to tackle that question first? How about over to you, Greg, since you've been kind of working in the field a little longer?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about. It sort of depends on the area. The higher you are in the security organization, the best way to maximize the effects is through, quite honestly, communications and understanding of the business. If you're more in the technical side of things, a lot of it involves it involves communication, I guess, across the board, but it also involves an understanding of what's being done. Whether you're a sysadmin, you have to understand how your equipment is hooked together, how your network is laid out. If you're on the software development side, you have to understand the software development methodologies. You have to understand the various language idiosyncrasies. I've Now, most places people work, they have quite a broad range of programs that they or programming languages. So it's not unusual. As a matter of fact, this happened to me a couple of months ago. A project called me up and said, "We need you to, take a look at this chunk of code." Well, it was in a language I'd never seen before. So I had the unique privilege of digging through a language, trying to analyze it for flaws and security things, having never seen it before in my life. So it can get to be quite interesting. But I would say if you're looking for one thing, or actually I can't really say one thing, I'd have to say two things that make the biggest difference in the security field. One of them would be communications, and the other would be knowledge of whatever area you're in. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Great, great answer, Greg. And since you mentioned communications, maybe Tony, would you like to comment on that question?
Absolutely. That was going to be my you have to be able to write well, of course, on your feet. Are you hearing me? Okay.
You are breaking up a little on some of your statements. Yeah, you are breaking up a little bit.
I don't know what I'm doing differently. Would you just wave at me and tell me what's better or worse? I don't have my headset here. I can call in. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, why don't you try calling in, and then I'll see if Tony wants to add anything to that question while you're dialing in.
Okay, thank you.
So over to you, Tony.
I'll be back.
I'm sorry, over to you, Mark. I'm sorry.
Well, I think in IT security, I mean, as much as anything else, there's there's a problem where, I mean, granted, 20% of the time you're going to be doing the real work, but what you're doing the other 80% of the time tends to be, writing guidelines, writing security plans. It's all the non-glamorous, non-fun part of life. I mean, it's like anything else, I mean, just sitting there waiting for, let's say, a vulnerability scan to finish, isn't exactly a lot of work, but it's, it's for better or for worse, it's a very important part of the profession and something that you really need to do. I mean, I don't know if the 80-20 principle can really apply in this, just because, I mean, there's just so many different facets that need to be used and examined, especially in IT security.
Yeah, great point, and good point about waiting for things to get done. So great point, Mark. So Tony, I guess there's no dialing, but why don't you try it again? It may have been my end that you just you were breaking up. So go ahead and start over again, Tony, and we'll see if it comes through.
Communications, of course, is very important in terms of any work that you're going to do, regardless of the field you're going to. I've done a lot of communications, all aspects of it. There's the technology aspects of it. You have to know how to use whatever technology you're using to communicate with or communicate in. You have to know the insides and out of the actual technology that you're using in your aspect of security. So yes, I would agree that communications is probably the top skill. If you're going to do an 80-20, then 20%, if you can master communications in all of its different aspects and flavors, you'll probably be more successful at anything you do.
Great, thanks, Tony, for that answer. And the only thing I would add is, kind of the 80-20 principle is just the programmatic approach to security and automation. So if you're getting into the field now, I would strongly encourage you to learn automation and programming, because in my opinion, that's the way security is going. And you're just going to see it's going to be infrastructure as code, and that's how it's going to be security as code, and that's how infrastructure is going to be deployed, rather than trying to hit buttons and things like that. Obviously, there'll be some manual stuff, but for kind of the deployment and configuration of security, I think the automated approach is going to be the way to go. So I'd like to move over to one of the questions that was emailed in. So this was a question sent in. So this person is interested in a career transition. They've got an MBA, a master's, and they're learning about security now. But his question was about kind of hours. So I'll read a little bit of his question, and then I'll turn it over to the a panel. So his question goes, I've read a wide range of opinions from expect long hours every single day to, if overtime becomes the norm, find a new job. Can I work in the field without having to hire a nanny or having to wait for my wife's job to slow down or my kids to go off to college? If the hours are inherently long, are there any entry-level opportunities that have flexible schedules to accommodate family constraints? And are there possibilities of core hours or remote working? So let me go ahead and let Greg take this one first again, and then we'll just rotate through the group again.
Well, I can certainly vouch for the remote hours because, like I said in my introduction, I'm completely virtual. So I work from home. My home office, if you will, is located in Wayne, Pennsylvania. And as to the long hours, the best answer is it sort of depends. My hours in general tend to be rather cyclic. I've had occasions where I get a call on a Saturday because something blew up. I've had the occasional 70, 80, 90-hour work week. But then again, this week, for example, has been pretty slow. I'm going to have no problems making the 40 hours. I haven't worked any overtime at all this week and actually have no plans to. You can judge a company a lot by the number of hours they expect you to keep. Quite honestly, if you're regularly working 80, 90 hours a week, that indicates that the company doesn't have enough security people, and that's the first problem. Whether it needs to be escalated up or it's a board level change or whatever the case is, somebody needs to make the appropriate people aware of that fact. Could also be that there's the need for automation. I've worked at a couple of places. Now this is more as a programmer, I'll admit, but the same thing applies to the security field as well. If, say, for example, you're spending all of your time doing simple tasks, as Chris alluded to, maybe there's some serious consideration there for some automation. If you as a technical security person are spending all your time digging through log files, there's a serious consideration there to go look at an analyst who can at a much lower bill rate do that sort of stuff. Maybe what you want to do is, rather than having a whole bunch of log files, go buy a SIM solution, and it'll dig through the log files, and instead of having to dig through, let's see how many I think we have well over, I'm trying to remember the exact number, it's in the millions of log files, log lines a day. We end up looking at like maybe 100. And actually, I don't even look at it, somebody else looks at it, and then if there's anything that's exciting, then it gets escalated up. So there's a lot of automated tools out there that can help reduce your efforts and your impact. So I would say no. Expect the occasional long day, the occasional long week, comes with the territory. Had it when I was a developer, as an architect, as a security person, but in general, you should not expect to work yourself to death.
Great. Thanks for that information. And I think some of it does kind of depend on the job field. So over to you, Tony. What are your thoughts on kind of the hours, and maybe what have you seen as you're kind of investigating this career field?
You have to live your life. If your life is your work, then I'm kind of sorry for you because there's so much more to life. I can't talk about security in particular because I'm still looking for a real security job, but I can talk about working in technology and computer technology in particular, since I've done that for decades. I did it as a single mom. it's always kind of a sine curve. There are going to be times that are going to be crazy busy, just as Greg said. There are going to be times when you're putting in a 90-hour week. But if that's happening more than once or twice a year, then you're probably in the wrong job. There are other aspects of working in any kind of technology field where you have a little bit more flexibility, let's say, in your schedule. Writing is one of those things, and education and training, which I also do, technical education, are some of those things that you can have a little bit more flexibility. They're always going to be hard go live dates for anything that I'm working on. There's always a hard date that I have to that I have to meet rather, and hope I don't miss. But the rest of the time, I can pretty much structure my own time, work more hours one week and fewer hours another. And that's something that I've chosen for my own life, just from having the experience to have raised a family. I always had a lot of babysitters that were available on call when something did blow up and I had to attend to. But if you're working for someone where you're working very long hours all of the time, then your resume should be out, because those type of people will let you burn out, and then what are you left with? You have to live your life and learn how to balance it.
Great, thanks, Tony. Mark, would you like to add anything, since you've kind of worked in the sysadmin side of things?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, just to kind of reinforce what the previous two speakers have said, I mean, it really, I mean, I haven't seen a whole lot of the crazy hours. It tends to, from what I've seen, and maybe partly it's the field, I mean, the area that I'm in with Baltimore, D.C., it's a lot of government work. But it tends to, I mean, it does tend to be pretty normalized hours. I mean, with the occasional, hey, I mean, if there's a fire, everybody has to put out the fire. I mean, there's an occasional time where there's off hours, where there's weekends, but I mean that's rarely going to be the case, a week to week. I mean, and if it is, that's really, I mean, that's a problem with the maturity of the organization. I mean, that's that seems like the organization that you're working for is a place that needs to do some hiring. And or that you can do some more on the front end to eliminate all this. I mean, with automation, or in a lot of places, if you're turning it over to like a help desk staff or something over the weekend to do monitoring, I mean, to have the proper procedures in place so that they don't have to continually have you do all the work, but that can easily be done by a different staff member.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Mark. And
I just thought of something else, Chris, that I'd like to add. What you said, Mark, triggered a thought in me. The differences in the different industries, because I've worked in a lot of different industries. There are some industries where people just work a lot, just given the type of industry. Government is one where they usually had more set hours for the roles that they had there. And there were other utility industries where I found that to be. Sure, there are cases where there are people who have a particular position where you're on call, where you might have 24-hour responsibility, but you're not expected to be on the job doing something. You just need to make yourself available. But look at different industries. You'll see that there are differences in how much time people in that industry typically work. I know that back in about 10 years ago, here in the Bay Area, we actually had a law passed by the state that made any time over 40 hours a week, whether you were on salary or on an hourly basis, you had to get overtime pay at, I think it was either the full rate or double time. So that encouraged employers to have you have more normal 40-hour work weeks instead of having more than that, because they'd have to pay to get you to put in those extra hours. Or to put it another way, if you were worked over 40 hours a week, they were making it worth your while to do so.
Yeah, great comments, Mark, and great add-on, Tony. And I think you're right. It depends on industry, and then just from a career field perspective, it's going to vary depending on what you're doing in the security field. So if you're an incident responder, a lot of my friends that do incident response, they can get the phone call and, hey, you got to be on a plane in an hour and go fly away, and they may work in some conference room for 12, 14 hours because they're trying to fix something, right, that's going wrong. If you're doing pen testing, you may do off hours because that's when that's the best time to do your attacks and things like that. I've noticed, like, for people that do the IT auditing, those kind of tend to be, if you got a big audit or big project, you may be real busy for that month, but then it kind of slacks off and there's downtime. If you're kind of doing the analyst kind of thing, maybe working in a SOC, you work, that can be like an 8 to 10 hour, and that might typically be on site. And what I've noticed too, you asked about remote work, a lot of these companies, like here in San Diego, a lot of the big companies have representatives here, so they're based out of Boston, the DC area, or up in the Bay Area, and their folks work remotely here, and especially like sales engineers and things like that. So great comments. So I'm going to kind of combine the next two questions because they're kind of a similar vein. So the question is, how important is previous experience in IT, networking, or programming before getting into security? And then how does kind of a lack of experience impact getting the job? So what are the things that you should look for that shows that you would look for that shows a candidate's potential if you're trying to hire somebody that doesn't have experience? So kind of a two-pronged question. So do you really need experience, or can you just jump right in? And as a hiring manager, what might you look for? We'll go ahead and I think we got a good rotation going, so go ahead, and Greg, why don't you go ahead and kick this one off?
All right. I've had the privilege of hiring individuals, programmers, anybody from the development field, security engineers, security architects, the whole thing. Part of what I look for, to be honest, and this kind of harkens back to something said earlier, is an ability to communicate. Maybe not so much for the programmers, but pretty much anything else. I mean, if you're answering the questions in the interview, you're just not going to interact well with the team. So you kind of have to, have some ability to interact with people. As from experience and stuff, frankly, it depends on the situation. If I'm hiring somebody to be a manager of architects, whether security architects or software architects, I'm looking for somebody that has some sort of managerial lead, qualities. Now, these could be in a office environment. They could be, like, say, for example, they led a Boy Scout troop. So you can kind of get leadership things in different situations. How important is it to have a high technical background in the security field? Unfortunately, the answer is, as pretty much usual in the security field, it depends. If you're going into a situation where it's expected that you have a high degree of skills, like, say, for example, a security engineer, and you're going to be responsible for engineering security solutions, they're going to expect some sort of a background. Now, you can get this background in various ways. You can get this background by taking maybe a network job somewhere and moving into the security field. That's actually the route I ended up taking. I mean, I started as a programmer, moved into the architect field, saw a need for security in my company, and had conversations with my manager, got to know the business people, and sort of built the security desire from that standpoint, and then just kind of naturally followed into that situation. It's not a fast process. It took, I would say, probably 3 years to convince the business that, and this was a few years ago, I'll admit, that security was a good thing and something needed to be done. So patience is important. And like I said, where you can get the skills, you can get the skills at a college level, you can get the skills at a technical level, you can get the skills at an associate level. If you show a desire, especially for entry level, if you show a desire that I'm really interested in this, I've gotten some certifications, which certification do you need? Again, depends. The general answer is a CISSP. Not the answer for everything. That's sort of a general answer to that. Networking plus, security plus. Cisco has them. Microsoft has them. That shows an interest in the security field. Blogging, writing articles, contributing to, even tweeting. Quite honestly, I don't actually check people's tweets, but there are companies that will do that. Joining security organizations. I'm not necessarily meaning to plug ISSA here, but one of the reasons I joined ISSA was because I could interact with people everywhere from somebody who hasn't been in security more than 6 months to people who have been in it. I'm thinking of one particular individual. He was in it for like 30 years. He was one of the people that helped define the security field. And the contacts. Right now I've got a couple of contacts with somebody who moved here from Florida. He happens to be the CISO of an organization, and he and I are talking about a job that he needs. So networking, writing, interacting with security people, showing a desire, to me those are almost as, if not more important than the actual technical capabilities, again, depending on the job we're talking about. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, great point, and I'll certainly plug ISSA. I think it's a great way to network and meet people, and plus the technical talks and other types of talks you tend to get at the meetings. And I would just like to piggyback one other thing too that's really available to people in the field are cyber competitions. So you've got the National Cyber League, you've got conferences now like B-Sides, DEF CON, they have Capture the Flag competitions. Some companies sponsor competitions. And so they do that as a way to have people demonstrate their skills. And then if you contribute to open source projects on GitHub and things like that, that's another way where you can prove your technical skills by writing a module or something for a tool like Metasploit or something that captures memory or something like that. So great points. So what are your thoughts, Tony, on this? Some ways you can kind of demonstrate your skills, or some things that maybe you're doing to demonstrate your skills to potential employers?
Well, Chris, I really like Greg's answer. I really think it was pretty comprehensive. You touched on one of the points that I was going to add to it. That's doing conferences. I'm fortunate to live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a lot of technology conferences. A lot of them allow me to go in to the exhibits, and there are always sessions that you can go into. There are always a few sessions you can go into, even without having to pay the thousands of dollars to do that. That's, in fact, how I happened to be on this panel. I met one of the officers, one of the directors at ISSA, when I was at the RSA conference earlier this year. And we've been in communication and might actually work on a book project together, I'm hoping. The one other thing that I wanted to add to what Greg said is to really stress the importance of on-job learning. I've been very fortunate. I've evolved through all types of different technology as the technology has evolved. And when a technology is new, there are no courses in it, there are no degrees you can get into it. You have to evolve from whatever you're doing. So be good at what you're doing. Be curious. Was it Steve Jobs that said be curious or something like that? Just go out there and show people that you're interested in it. Be willing to be on that leading edge, sometimes the bleeding edge. Learn as much as you can in every way that you can. Do all the things that have been mentioned. Network. Meet people who are in the field, people who want to be in the field, and that's the way that I've been able to progress in my career, and it's the way that I hope to be able to progress in the security aspects of my career also.
Yeah, that's a great point. And what's great about our field is, even like the famous people are so very approachable. So you can go to these conferences and you can meet, the famous security people, like. I won't say any names, but you go to a conference, you see them give a talk, you go approach them afterwards, and they'll give you a card or they'll answer your questions. So that's really good. Greg, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to toss in something to Tori's comment that actually struck me as rather amusing. I've actually gone through college, got myself a master's, but the amusing thing is I started programming before there were programming courses. I started architecture before there were architecture courses, and I started security before there were security courses. So everything I've taken at the college level and at the learning level has been retroactive, if you will. So yes, it's quite possible. Sometimes you stumble into these sorts of things. Other times you look for it. But it comes down to, patience and persistence. Just because company A decides that, oh gosh, we don't like you, so we're not going to hire you, doesn't mean company B will. As I told my kids, and I sort of regret I didn't save them, but when I tried to get my first job, I actually pasted rejection notices. This is back when they sent rejection notices. And I covered my entire living room wall with rejection notices before I got my first job. So you just have to be more persistent than everyone else out there.
Yeah, great point. Persistence does pay off. Mark, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think actually security is actually one of those things where a lot of the experience that employers tend to want is familiarity with tools. And the good thing with the security tools is pretty much you can get most of them, at least the community or a trial version, a limited version, for free. So like one thing that I've done is when I loaded up a computer with Linux. So and a lot of in security, a lot of people want Linux experience. So I've loaded it up with Linux. I've tried out a few different distributions of it. Once I have it set up, then you can load on Tenable's Nessus vulnerability scanner. They have a community version where you can scan 16 IPs at a time. Same thing with Nexpose. You can do 32 IPs. And Splunk is also it's a very highly sought after. They have a free version. You can just load it up on your computer. You can experiment. Just take every old computer you have, just set it up on your home network, and just start scanning them. Start just playing with it, and that way, when you do get to a point, where you're with an employer, they say, oh, what experience do you have? What Splunk experience? Say, look, I've had nothing professionally. However, this is what I've set up at home. This is the setup I've done. This is the problems I've worked through, and I found that is regarded very highly. I mean, certainly not as highly as doing it 40 hours a week, but just the ability to say, look, I do have familiarity with these programs. I've used them. I know what I'm not walking in not knowing anything, and being able to frankly check those boxes of limited Splunk experience, limited Nessus experience, Linux experience. Frankly, that's I don't think anyone you either know it or you don't. Frankly, with Linux, there's grades of good with it, but being able to I've had interviews where they're like, oh, how do you shut down a process in Linux? And just being able to answer that question is it is really all that they're asking for. I mean, they're not asking you to do crazy set up an Active Directory on Linux or something like that. I mean, they're asking for, do you have the base knowledge? Do you have the aptitude for it? And that shows a lot of initiative on your part as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Setting up your home labs, and from a learning perspective, I mean, I almost think there's too much information out there on the internet. You got Coursera, Cybrary, all these different sites now. Sometimes it's hard to choose the best site to get free training or low cost training. And one other thing too that I encourage students to do is volunteer for like nonprofits. Most communities have some type of nonprofit that gives out computers to needy families. Nonprofits, like your local nonprofit might need help securing their computer system. So you can go through and demonstrate skills with them, you're giving up some time, but you're gaining that experience, and you've got something you can show. And if you do a good job, that company may, that company will probably recommend you. That nonprofit might give you an endorsement. And then internships too, if you happen to be at a college or university, they typically offer those too. So great responses. So
actually, I'm sorry. I'd like to also throw in virtualization. I mean, there's some free virtualization products, VirtualBox being the one I've been using. But that basically, once you have a Linux system loaded up and going in, although it'll run on Windows too, load up VirtualBox and then create a couple of virtual Linux machines or virtual Windows machines. I mean, it takes memory, but I mean, it's not that intensive, frankly. And and just being, I mean, even with just one machine, you can do a lot of the working back and forth and scanning the other computers. And Kali Linux, I just wanted to mention that too, is a security distribution, also free, that includes a lot of the tools that you typically would need.
Yeah, great point about Kali, because you can set that up and do some testing. And if you want to do more on the incident response side, Security Onion. If you want to monitor your own home network for free, pfSense for firewalls, a lot of those are free. So excellent points. So so let me get to the next question here. Oh, I think I will. Okay, so this is a little bit different. So what are some non-technical roles / career options in the security field? For example, say I have with an MBA, a banking background, and little technical experience. So are there any career options, security career options, for non-technical career options for somebody in this with this experience? And just back over to you, Greg, for the first response.
Surprisingly to some, perhaps, the CISO really should be a non-technical background. Now, it's not to say if you have a technical background you can't be a CISO, but it's becoming more and more that you don't have to have a technical background to become a CISO. Now, that being said, we'll lower the sights here a little bit. Auditing. I've encountered auditors who understand policies and procedures, and they've picked up a technical smattering here and there, but they weren't technically based. They're there to make sure that the proper forms and procedures are followed. Policy people. Again, if you have a company the size of 100 people, you probably will cover all of these roles. So some of these roles are more applicable to larger sized companies. Our company, for example, we have somebody who's responsible for writing policies and procedures. They are by definition not technical documents. And you have to be able to communicate well. You have to understand what the rules and the regulations are for your company. What's your risk tolerance level for the company. Surprisingly, perhaps, two areas that I've seen more and more integrated into security are finance and legal. Well, I guess maybe legal isn't that much of a surprise, but being able to understand legalities and stuff. We all are familiar with the EU directives. And now we have this, Britain exiting the EU. What does that mean? Everybody's worried and in a panic. What are the legal ramifications? I'm a security person. I read legal documents with a can of Red Bull next to me because I can never stay awake. But somebody who can read through that and then digest it and say, okay, here's what the impact is to the company. That's a big plus, especially when it comes to privacy. And that's actually another real big area, the whole area of privacy. You don't necessarily need to know how to make something private, but you probably need to understand what the the differences are between the California laws and the Massachusetts laws and the EU laws and the Iranian laws and all these sorts of things. So that's another area for somebody who's not really interested in the technical field. Or the last one I'll mention is project management. We have a project manager who has project managed all sorts of things, knows very little from a technical standpoint. I'm sorry, not him, her. But she's a great project manager. She makes sure things are on time. She makes sure things get done. The right people are in the meetings. The meetings are scheduled on time. People attend, sends out the meeting notes. Very little is technical, but she's an invaluable resource to the security group, is her ability to manage projects. So.
Yeah, excellent points. And when we talk about infosec, people tend to glom on the technology and using cool tools, but having well-written policy that meets your company's culture and meets your your regulatory requirements and all of that's really important. Yeah, and managing large projects is that's a whole skill set into itself. So great, excellent points. So over to you, Tony. Any thoughts on this question?
Sure. The term technical is a little bit charged for me. Again, I'm a technical communicator, so by definition, anything that I would do would be technical, and there are all kinds of things I've done in companies. So you've mentioned policy and procedures areas. I also have a master's degree in business, so I have gone in and documented policies and procedures in the areas of accounting, for example. I've done the education and training work. A lot of the times I work with people, I guess this will be a little bit technical, but the interface design, any kind of communication, there's business communications. It doesn't have to be a legal document. It might have to get a legal review, but there's writing that has to be done that you don't have to be a technical person to do, that would then get the adequate reviews by the legal people and the technical people to make sure everything is correct. But how you say something often makes a difference in how someone else reading it can understand it. So to have the strong skills that are not necessarily technical skills but are communication skills is also important. I think in most careers, as you progress in your career, you learn management skills, the time management skills. There are people who work in human resources in a security area or in the security realm that aren't necessarily technical people. Everything we do today is pretty much technical. Driving my car is technical right now. There's all kinds of lights and buttons and buzzers and things that I have to be able to configure. So saying technical, it's not necessarily a precise term. I don't have to be able to go in and code whatever to be able to even assign security profiles to different users. Once the training is done, the documentation is clear and accurate, someone who's not technical can go in and assign different security profiles, for instance. So yeah, I think there's a lot to do if you're interested in this field and have some good business skills to start out with.
Yeah, great point, Tony. I liked your comment about design too, and interfaces and things. That's actually another interesting field that that can use improvement. So, a great answer. So, Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a big role for non-technical people, as long as you can. I mean, part of the way you can get your foot in the door is show how you can translate those skills over into what the company is looking for. I mean, it's even easier if you're with the company. You say, look, I've been doing this. I'd like to do some of the security side, and frankly, if you have some skills and anything else, that'll translate, and you can also take on the security role. I mean, most companies will jump at that pretty quickly, or find you a way to do it. And frankly, and some of it's just being able to show that you can do things, that you can do things well, and that you can translate the skills over. I mean, I came into IT from I was a social worker before I went into IT, and I think part of the reason why is the place where I got my first job had some frankly difficult users, and they were like, great, you're a social worker. You can handle all these really hard people, like these people that are just driving us crazy. And I was, and I'm like, coming from a social work background, I'm like, no, these people are not crazy. I've seen crazy. I'm like, these people are easy. So I think being able to show how your previous skills can be applicable into a security role. However, I mean, and I can't tell from the question if they don't want any technical work or not, but just being able to do that, and you can build up the technical experience probably fairly quickly. So once you're in that role.
Yeah, great point, and excellent comment about dealing with people, right? Because the sysadmin side, even it's in security, you have to deal with people, whether it's bringing bad news or telling people they broke a rule or something like that, and then just asking. My first infosec job back in my Navy days, I said, "Hey, I want to be an information system security manager," and they said, "Great, you're one now." So I got a little scared after that, but I figured my way through it. So great points. So here's kind of another question that's kind of on the same area but a little bit different. So here's the question. I'm a career changer in my 50s and I have no professional experience in IT, but many years of experience working in teams and interacting with customers and coworkers. Are the skills I have attained working with others something that transfers to IT and InfoSec? And we'll just keep the rotation going. So over to you, Greg.
Most definitely. I would have to say, as you move up in the ranks of security, interacting with teams, whether it's your team or some other team in the company, as we've mentioned, all four of us have mentioned, interacting with people. There's frequent saying in information security, people are your weakest link. Being able to communicate with non-technical and non-security, first of all, and second of all, non-technical people. Okay, I'm an architect, so I draw pretty pictures, and one can argue there are times it's fairly technical. That's all well and good. But I spend most of my day talking with project managers who, frankly, wouldn't know a secure system if it stepped on their toe. They're more interested in how long will this delay me? What do I need to have done? Who's responsible for it? And then, if I need to delay a project, let's say, for example, they have some SQL injection flaws that are, exposed to the internet. This is a bad thing. So how do I translate that to a VP or, the CIO? When the CIO knocks on your door, figuratively in my case, and says, I want to know why you're not letting this project go, I can't just look at him and say, well, you got SQL injection flaws. He's going to look at me and say, I could care less. You're costing me $1 million a day. So you have to be able to communicate with them on their terms and use things that they are concerned about. It's like when you have a teenager. You can say buckle your seatbelt because it's good for you, because it's safe. Well, if any of us have ever had teenagers, they're impervious. They're never going to die. Nothing ever bad's going to happen to them. So you kind of have to couch it in their terms. What's something they care about. Same thing with anybody you interact with, and I would have to say maybe more so in the security field. It's sort of, and I draw the analogy between security and lawyers a lot, which is actually kind of entertaining if you know me, because neither group would exist if it wasn't for bad people. How do lawyers restrict a business from going out and entering into maybe a risky area? Somebody from a let's see here, what's the phrase I want to use? A company that we don't want to do business with just offered this guy, $1 million to buy his product. The lawyer's going to say no because we don't want to do it. But you can't just say no. You have to explain why it's bad. Same thing for security. So anytime you have those capabilities or those abilities, they're going to be huge in the security field.
Great points. Over to you, Tony.
Chris, can you read some of those qualities again that the questioner was asking about and whether or not they apply?
Yeah, but many years of experience working in teams, interacting with customers and coworkers, and are these the skills I've attained, do these transfer over?
Of course. I don't know how much more there is to say about that.
Great,
it's going to make you a better person to work with. Again, it's going to, a lot of what you learn by working with other people and working on teams is communication. And any job is better with good communication skills, any work that you would go into. So that's definitely valuable and transferable.
Great, thanks, Tony. And Mark, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, not much. Just that, yeah, I do feel like, you can do it. You can switch those skills, the soft skills, if you will, over to any field. I mean, and being able to effectively run a team is, frankly, I mean, that's a skill that I wish a lot of people had that they don't. And I, like I said, my thing is I always like to be, as long as you can show that you have familiarity with the technical part too, I think is important. It just, like I said, just the free stuff that's available to you. It's easy to build up that familiarity to the point where you can effectively communicate, where you can have that effective base and bring all the soft skills into play.
Great. So yeah, I think this is kind of an area we all agree on. So we've been kind of broad on what we've been talking about. So I'm going to ask the panel kind of a little more of a specific question that was mailed in. So here's a question: how do I answer the interview question? I see you don't have a lot of experience in security. ... So over to you, Greg, for the first. How would you answer that question, assuming you were new to the field?
I think Mark probably touched on it, and that's if you go in to an interview and you say, I've got no experience in security, hire me for a security position, you're not going to be very successful. But if you go in and you say, you're right, I have no formal experience in this, but I have, take your pick of any of these, experience in Kali Linux, I have a CISSP, I'm a board member for a security organization, I write for a, security blog, I've written security articles, I presented security papers. That goes a long way to showing people that while you might not have the company title of Security X, you have the ability at security. And nowadays, with the increasing importance of security and, quite frankly, the lack of decent security people, that goes a long ways.
Great answer. Okay, over to you, Tony.
At the risk of sounding like Sarah Palin, I used to be able to see the security team from my desk. But seriously, I would say something along the lines of, I've been in the business world working with technology. I've worked with all different aspects of technology. And as a communications professional, I know how to interact with people and quickly learn, ask them the right questions so I can learn any area that I have to work with. And at this point, I wouldn't say I have no experience. Just because my job has never had security as a job requirement or something in the job description doesn't mean I haven't worked with security. I think we all have it in some aspect of our work or other. It's hard to have a job today where you don't have to be concerned with security if you're working in any kind of environment. So I don't think that there's anybody who doesn't know anything. There are people who haven't been paid for their security skills yet. And I know how to learn things. What I know how to do is learn, and I can learn this. I've learned telecommunications, I've learned all kinds of client-server stuff, I've learned programming, and security is another area that's evolving, and I can learn it.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point about letting the potential employer know that you're willing to learn and that you can learn. Excellent point. So over to you, Mark.
I got a little confused. Could you just repeat the question for me once?
So, so how do I answer the interview question? I see you don't have a lot of experience in security. ... How would you answer that question?
That's a question I've been asked a lot of times. So it's basically, for me, it's just a way to take what you do have and show how you can translate that. Oh, I see you don't have a lot of experience in this. Well, yes, but I do have a lot of experience with, like, let's say, running a Windows directory or Windows Active Directory, and with that, there's a lot of permissions set up, and being able to tie that in, they're like, and being able to speak about it, being like, no, well, I didn't do it, but as a Windows administrator, I was able to I was able to go with a institute of role-based access control, by setting up roles and being able to tie what experience you do have into basically what they're looking for.
Great.
Mark,
Go
can
ahead,
I
Tony.
suggest something? Mark, you've had security experience. You've gone back to school and trained in it. That's certainly an excellent answer for someone to ask you, I see you have no security. Well, you would correct them. You do have experience. You went back to school and got a degree in it. And you had transitioned from social work into working with security just because you were able to transfer those skills and you have enough of an interest. I think you have a really great answer if you've gone back to school in something.
Yeah. So I've always felt good with those answers of mine. Nobody else has apparently, but that's okay.
Okay, great point. Yeah, and that can be a kind of a tough question to answer sometimes. So good. So here's kind of a different take. Or different kind of aspect of this field. So here's a question. So there's a lot of love about information security in terms of the technology people and solving hard problems. But what are some of the what are some negative aspects or things you do not like about the field? And what then that you would advise us to prepare or to watch out for? And we'll just over to you, Greg.
If I had to sum it up, I guess I'd say frustration. You probably can't see the wall behind me, but I'm sure there's some head-sized dents in the wall. As I've been working with people. I have one developer in mind who, for some reason, cannot grasp the fact that you need to check your input. Anytime a scan is run on this person's code, invariably, they're taking a string directly from a web page and putting it into a SQL statement. So there's some frustration there. It's like, come on, you're a developer. Ignoring the whole security side of things, how do you know that person isn't going to put in some crap and cause the program to end? So there's that frustration. There's the frustration when you're talking to directors and project managers that they have to do the weighing between what costs more or what isn't bringing in enough money, and they may not prioritize security to the level you think they should. And that filters all the way up to the top. The people at the very top, they might decide to reorganize the security group. They might decide that, we're going to, let this project be released even though it's got, it looks like Swiss cheese from a security standpoint. No matter what you say or do, this is the decision they're going to make. Extremely frustrating, but sometimes it is what it is. Listening to news articles where, the OPM hack was a great example. It's kind of like you just want to go over to somebody and go pap, 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 because it's like, wake up, folks. Wasn't anybody paying attention? So I would have to say, for me, that's the biggest negative. Some other people might say the occasional long hours, but I worked as a developer. I'm used to the whole cyclic nature of it, so it doesn't bother me. But for some people, that can be frustrating. And then the last one I'll mention here is the when something breaks, if you'll pardon the expression, all hell breaks loose and it's your fault. That can get old fairly quickly. But those are really the only negatives I've encountered.
Great, excellent points. Over to you, Tony.
I'm still in the courting stage with security, so there's nothing but wonderful and delight and stars in my eyes at this point. But I do agree with some of Greg's comments about working with annoying people. But so far, I haven't met anyone that's truly annoying in security. So far, I'm still in love.
Awesome. And over to you, Mark. And you kind of dealt from the sysadmin side too. So I'm sure you've got some good, some excellent insight.
Yeah, it's kind of I guess a metaphor. I take my kids to the beach and they try to build a sandcastle below the water line. So they're building that sandcastle. The wave comes in, wipes most of it away. Then they're just trying to fight that wave. They keep building it up, and no matter what, that sandcastle is going to go after a little while. And that's kind of how security or system administration as well is. It's just a never-ending. You fix one bug, you fix one problem, and there's just the next problem's just right behind it. It's just a never-ending thing. You never get to a point where like, okay, we're good. We're just in maintenance mode now. There's just always something new to address, to fix, to figure out.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, it's kind of like a never-ending battle. And the only thing I would add is, in this field, you have to be prepared to tell people bad news. So you may be the one that has to go to the boss and say, 10,000 of our records are available in Pastebin or something, or we've had a data breach, or this person broke the rules and they have this on their computer, those kind of things. So you do have to be prepared to tell people bad news. So great response. So here's another question. So this is a little bit broader. So so how do you find careers in the information security field? Are there better places to find job posts than others? And so over to you, Greg, for the first response on this one.
I'll go with my standard answer of it depends. Yes, there are some places that are better than others. For example, if you're looking for an information security field, someplace that specializes in banking, probably not going to be your best bet. Although if you're interested, for example, working for Walt Disney, you just go on the Walt Disney site, and I mean, I visited on occasion. My wife wants me to move to Orlando, Florida, so she can go visit Disney World. And they're always looking for security people. Anywhere from California to Florida and places in between. Indeed.com, for example, that's a great one. And just interacting with people. Again, inadvertent plug for ISSA here. You go to some of these conferences, whether they're a security conference or a chapter meeting, and ISC Squared is another one, ISACA is another one. You talk to people, you interact with them. Some of the chapter meetings you go to, they have a little name badge, and you get to put on your name badge whether you're looking for a job or not. People will reach out to you. If you start up a conversation with somebody, turns out he's the CISO of Catholic Health Initiatives, and yeah, I happen to be looking for such and such. Those are really great places too. I know ISSA has a job site that you can take a look at. So, again, it's just a matter of that old persistence and keeping at it.
Great, excellent resources. Over to you, Tony. What are some of the resources you've been using?
I've been using the same resources I would look for any technical communication position in, and looking at the positions that lean towards security. For instance, there was something on policy and procedures. I've done lots of those. And there was this payments areas that they needed some documentations and policies and procedures for payments in. That was one. And a lot of it is procedure work, but where I look is at the same job boards that I look at, but I just look for certain key words, certain types of industries that are more likely to have security positions. Remember, I'm trying to transition the skills I had. I'm not trying to go anywhere and be a starting security professional. I want to be the expert technical communicator that I am in a security domain.
Great point. And over to you, Mark. What are some of the resources you would recommend?
I guess for me, it's either looking at individual jobs or individual companies. Going to some of the job fairs, or not even job fairs, some of just the conferences. I know B-Sides is one that I've gone to that they have one located right near me. So I went to that, spoke to recruiters, just talked to people and found out kind of what's there. Beyond that, it's the normal. LinkedIn is a pretty good place for it. I've had some successes on LinkedIn as career builder and monster. I mean, all the basic kind of things, really. I see a note here that there's going to be career networking thing at the ISSA International Conference too.
Yeah, great point. So the ISSA International Conference in Dallas, and that's 2 and 3 November this year, and they'll have a career area. Like you mentioned, the B-sides are good for career areas. Your local ISSA chapter meetings and the other security groups. For veterans, if you're a veteran, there's a lot of veteran resources. There's Veterans Retraining Assistance Program, SANS Cyber Talent. They have that's another good resource for jobs. And I think with the SANS Cyber Talent, you can take a pretest and they kind of grade you, and that kind of follows your profile. Then you can use that. And they have some free training for veterans, and they have a women's academy too that it's free accelerated training for women entering the field. So, and there's a lot of resources out there. These companies want to bring good people in, so there are a lot of free places you can take advantage of. And actually, Reddit has a good InfoSec job thread too. I think they update it quarterly, and that's another a good resource. So there's another question posted in here. I know we're about 20 minutes. Got about 20 minutes left, and I want to make sure we kind of answer this question. So I have a Security Plus certification, doing a lot of reading, video, tutorial learning, but I don't have any hands-on experience. How can I get that first-time hands-on experience to land me somewhere where I can build on my skills? So I think we've kind of commented on this a little, but do you want to add anything else to this one, Greg?
I was earlier looking at a tweet from a friend of mine who's a penetration tester, and his response to that would be, well, break into a company and tell them you got into their stuff. Probably not a recommended way to do it. They tend to throw lawyers at you when you do that. But, again, Mark mentioned, hacking contests, for example. Learning stuff on your own. Working through the company that you might be at, or the school. Schools do a lot of great stuff when it comes to things like cyber competitions and various places like that. So there's plenty of places to get it. You just have to step up and do it.
Yeah, good point. And one thing too, I don't think we mentioned. It's relatively new, bug bounty program. So that's a way you can actually break into a company with their authorization. At BugCrowd1 or BugCrowd. If you Google bug bounty, Facebook has a good one. So that's another way you can demonstrate experience by finding that vulnerability, and maybe that company will hire you up. You got anything to add, Tony, for this question?
Volunteering, which you've mentioned before, I know, Chris, is to volunteer to help someone else with their security. And there's always things like, if you've been doing all this studying and all this watching videos and things, tutorials, then start writing about it yourself and post it. You can post things to LinkedIn, you can create a blog, or maybe not even create a blog, but look at other blogs that are out there and start commenting on them. Get your name known in the area.
Great point. And Mark, do you want to add anything to this question?
Yeah, just maybe to reinforce what Greg had said earlier. I mean, if the place where you're currently working is a great place to get some experience. Just talk to whoever your security person is, or if you don't have a security person, that's even better. To just basically you're taking on some extra responsibility on your own, but I mean you're already there, you're already a known quantity. It's really that's the best way to break into it. I mean, of all, if you can do that.
Great point. So this next question, this is from one of the ones that was emailed in, and so I haven't really thought about this one that much. But are there areas in security that are easier to break into than others? So is there one area that you think might be easier to break into? So what do you think about that, Greg?
I would have to say yes. Um, for example, if you've been doing project management, it's probably easy to transition into a project manager of security. You know, for example, if you're a CIO or that sort of thing, it's probably easy to transition into that because you have a lot of the skills you're looking for. Penetration testers, say you found 5 or 6, the bug bounty things, and you helped, did some penetration tests for, some not-for-profit companies, and you had a highly regarded presentation on penetration testing at RSA. Chances are you're going to have an easy time stepping into that sort of thing because you have what they're looking for. Now, me, for example, I haven't done any penetration of companies for decades. I would not transition well into that scenario. So some of it depends on your background, some of it depends on your interests. That's about all I got.
Okay, great, thanks. And Tony, do you think there's any areas that are easier to break into than others?
I haven't found it yet.
Okay, great point. All right, how about you? How about you, Mark?
Sorry, I'm problems finding my mute button. I'd say probably the basic, cybersecurity analyst role would probably be the easiest way to break in. It's kind of, you're doing mostly monitoring. If you can just go to one of those roles, show that you have some SIM experience, that's the SIEM, Splunk, some other ones like that, some experience with that, and I think that's kind of that seems to be kind of the entry level from what I've seen. So and it's it's not the funnest job in the world, but it's a good place to get in.
Yeah, good point. And I would recommend. There's actually, if you do a little bit of research, there's some good information. Government Department of Labor, ISC Squared does some research. ISSA, and they can highlight. If you find the fields where there's the lower number of people, that they need more people, those are probably the easier ones to break into because they just need that need those skill sets. And if you're kind of not sure about what a job encompasses, there's it's called the NICE framework. If you Google this, it's from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it kind of has job descriptions. It's a little bit kind of government focused, but I know companies use these too, and they describe knowledge, skills, and abilities that you need for different job fields. So that might be something that's worth checking out. So as we kind of wrap up here, I'll do one more question, and this one's a little more specific. So how do I stand out from an entry-level candidate? So how do you stand out from other candidates?
Good question. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. Part of it is, I'm just thinking back to when I'm looking at hiring people. Some of the things I look for, energy level, dedication, for lack of a better phrase. If I have one candidate who's worked 9 to 5, worked at the same job for 20 years, and wants to transition into something, okay, steady person. But if I got somebody here who's worked at a number of jobs, has a good level of experience, does blogging, is active in their community, does various things like that, that individual will be more attractive to me than necessarily the 9 to 5 sort of a person. Sometimes presentations, somebody who's not ever done any presentations at all, never written any articles, versus somebody who's, and quite frankly, you stick your neck out when you do that. You stand up in front of a crowd of 400 people. If you're saying something that they don't like, you can have an entertaining presentation time. Same thing for an article. You put out an article, so you're kind of putting yourself out there. That's more attractive than, again, somebody who's just a 9-to-5 professional. There are certainly areas where 9-to-5 is a great thing, but in security, I tend more toward the broader range, the more, the people who are more dedicated, I guess, is the quickest way to say it.
Excellent points. So, Tony, what are some ways you can make yourself stand out as a potential candidate?
Just keep being my wonderful professional self. I have, and studying, learning everything I can in every venue that I can find someplace else to learn about security. I have spent dozens of hours watching lectures and videos. You've mentioned some of the different free universities and things that are available out there. So once I've done all that studying, then I'm also going to be doing some writing in the area that hopefully will get some visibility for me, and here I am.
Great answer, yeah, and then participating in hangouts like this too, right? So that's another way to stand out. All right, over to you, Mark. What are your thoughts?
I think it's like when you apply to college, it's the extracurriculars sometimes that make you stand out. I mean, it's the participating in conferences, writing a blog, writing articles, maybe doing a presentation at one of the conferences, something like that. I mean, just something where you can kind of show that, I mean, there's a million people I'll go back to my Splunk example. I mean, there's a million people out there who can use Splunk. There's a very, very small subset of that can write effectively about Splunk, that can give a talk about it, that can do something about it. I mean, and that's what I think really would make somebody stand out, or a blog, which actually I say that because I've started working on one for security for myself. Just something that shows that you're not just going to come in, click a button all day and then leave. That there's something extra there.
Great. Yeah, having a blog is definitely a way to kind of stand out. So we're kind of in the last 8 minutes or so. So what I'd like to do now is just give each panelist just a chance to give their parting thoughts of anything we didn't cover that you'd like to mention, any suggestions, websites, or any other types of things that you'd like to recommend to our listeners. So over to you, Greg, for your closing comments.
I would say pick an organization. I personally think ISSA is one of the better ones out there, and get involved. Now, getting involved could mean going to the chapter meetings. It could be becoming a board member. It could be volunteering. Whatever happens to work for your situation. And just that alone will get you a lot of exposure. You'll get to know people in the field, in the industry. It doesn't matter whether you're a student, you're a professional, or whether you're 73 years old and you're tired of playing golf all day long. Put yourself out there. And the other things I kind of iterate on is patience is key. It's unlikely somebody's going to walk up to you and say, here's $1 million job for, the next 40 years. Not real likely. And persistence. Again, you're going to be rejected. The perfect job you thought was out there, they're not going to hire you. You just have to be more persistent than them.
All excellent points, and persistence is key, because it can be a bit of a slog if you're in the job hunting market. Great points. Okay, over to you, Tony. What are your kind of final thoughts?
I would say if you're transitioning from another field, make sure that you keep the skills you have sharp. I'm still participating very actively in my Society for Technical Communications. I'm attending meetings, keeping up with the latest in communications. I'll be working in the security domain, but I'll be doing technical communications, so I'm making sure that I keep those skills absolutely at their peak.
Great advice. Over to you, Mark.
I'd say, I mean, beyond just finding something that interests you, just kind of keep abreast of everything that's going on. I mean, just whether however goofy or not. I mean, for me, one of the ways I do that is through Twitter, and I'm not going to give out my personal handle because it's not a work account. um, but just like, I mean, there's some really interesting resources out there. I think there's one called one that I really like about IT security, that's kind of how I've spread into some of the other ones, is called Swift on Security. It's a system administrator who pretends to be Taylor Swift, who writes a lot about security things, and it's very informative. She was one of the ones. There was last week there was an app that came out that said, these people said, oh, you can in real time view satellite images, and if you see a migrant boat in the Mediterranean, you can tag it so we can get the Coast Guard of whatever nation's closest to come rescue them. And she was one of the first ones to say that's actually not possible, to look at the code and say, no, that's actually just it's a complete farce. And it was a small deal. I mean, it was in the New York Times, but it was a very small deal. But it was something that was very interesting, and it's just a very social way, a very interesting way to get into some of the more interesting aspects of the field.
Yeah, great point about Twitter. And I kind of see Twitter. I have my own. I made a Twitter list of all like security leaders. So people like Richard Balick, Ed Scotus, all these really smart people that you couldn't afford their consulting fees, but they're giving away free information and advice on Twitter. They're kind of doing your reading for you, and it's a great way to keep abreast of what's going on. And I'm a big fan of podcasts. There's a lot of great security-related podcasts out there that give you advice and that can kind of help you learn about the field. So great point on Twitter. So first, I'd like to thank the panelists. So I really enjoyed talking with everybody on the panel today. All of your answers were, I think, spot on, and I think you gave some really good advice to people entering the career field, and this will be recorded so people will be able to watch it in the future. So thanks for spending the time to serve on the panel. And for those that ask questions or send in questions, we appreciate your questions, great questions, because it is kind of a tough field to get into sometimes, and it can be a bit daunting. I hope you found the advice valuable. A post-event evaluation form can be found in the comments section. Please complete the form, and to enter to win an Amazon gift card. The feedback helps us develop future episodes and what we want to do in the future for this, and make sure we're meeting the audience needs for this. If you have any additional questions you'd like to ask the speakers, you can email Leah Lewis. She's at llewis@issa.org, and she'll pass those along to us. We're happy to. I'm sure I speak for the other panelists. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And then for more information about ISSA's cybersecurity career lifecycle, please visit www.issa.org. And I'd encourage you to join ISSA. Like I think we mentioned, it's a great organization, and other security organizations are great too. And we appreciate your feedback, and we appreciate everybody watching today.
Thank you.